What if the moment we call death is not an ending, but a threshold? Every human being who has ever lived has asked the same unanswerable question. Kings and beggars, scientists and monks. The question that outlives every civilization that has ever tried to answer it. What happens the instant the brain goes dark, and the heart beats for the last time? Some say it is nothing. Others say it is everything. Tonight, we are not here to tell you what to believe. We are here to walk you through what science has measured, what history has recorded, what religions have taught, and what the dying themselves have described. By the end, the facts will still be incomplete. But the question will feel entirely different. Death is the only certainty every living thing shares, and yet it remains the only certainty we cannot describe from experience. Every civilization in recorded history, without exception, has built temples, written scriptures, and told stories to answer one question: what happens after the last breath? Psychologists call this mortality salience, the awareness of our own inevitable death, and the profound way it shapes how we live. It is woven into our survival instinct, the same ancient wiring that once kept our ancestors alive in the wild. But humans are the only species, as far as we know, that turns the fear of death into the search for meaning. Let's begin with what can actually be measured. Clinically, death is not always a single instant. Doctors distinguish between clinical death, when the heart stops and breathing ceases, and biological death, when cells and tissues, including the brain, permanently lose function. Between the two, there can be a window of minutes. In that window, something unexpected has been observed. Some studies using EEG monitoring on dying brains, in both animal models and limited human cases, have recorded brief, organized surges of electrical activity after cardiac arrest. Researchers do not yet agree on what this means, and it has not been shown to prove or disprove awareness after death. Some physicists and neuroscientists have also proposed quantum consciousness hypotheses, suggesting consciousness may not be purely a product of brain chemistry. It is important to state clearly, this remains a minority, speculative hypothesis, not an accepted scientific conclusion. What science agrees on is this: consciousness, as we can measure it, depends on brain activity. What we do not yet know is whether consciousness is only produced by the brain, or received by it, like a signal through a receiver. That question remains genuinely open. Which brings us to one of the most studied, and most debated, phenomena in modern medicine, the near-death experience, or NDE. Across thousands of documented cases, from different cultures, religions, and age groups, people who were clinically resuscitated have reported strikingly similar experiences: a sensation of leaving the body, moving through a tunnel toward light, overwhelming peace, meeting deceased loved ones, a rapid life review, and a distorted or absent sense of time. Skeptics point to neurological explanations, oxygen deprivation, surges of brain chemicals, or temporal lobe activity, as possible causes for these vivid experiences. Believers, and some researchers, argue the remarkable consistency across unrelated cultures suggests something more is happening than random neural noise. Neither side has definitive proof. What is certain is that these experiences are real to the people who report them, and they are still being studied today at major research hospitals. Long before modern medicine, ancient civilizations built entire worldviews around the journey of the soul. In ancient Egypt, the heart of the deceased was believed to be weighed against the feather of Ma'at, truth itself. A heart heavier than the feather meant the soul was devoured, a lighter heart passed into the afterlife. In ancient Greece, philosophers described the underworld ruled by Hades, while Plato taught that the soul was immortal, temporarily housed in the body. In Hindu and Buddhist traditions, death is not an ending but a transition, the soul, or consciousness, continuing through reincarnation, shaped by karma, cycling until liberation, or moksha, is achieved. Native American, Celtic, and Mesopotamian traditions each described their own spirit worlds, ancestral realms, sacred lands, or shadow kingdoms beneath the earth. different symbols, different names. But the same underlying question, asked by every culture that ever looked at the stars and wondered where we go. Today, billions of people find their answer through faith. In Christianity, the soul is judged and continues to heaven, hell, or, in some traditions, purgatory, with resurrection central to its teaching. In Islam, the soul faces judgment before God, with paradise or punishment determined by one's deeds and faith. In Judaism, views vary widely, from a focus on righteous living in this life to belief in a future world to come. In Hinduism and Sikhism, the soul is reborn according to karma, seeking eventual liberation. In Buddhism, there is no fixed, permanent self to begin with, only a continuity of consciousness that carries forward until awakening ends the cycle. In Taoism, death is described as a natural transformation, a return to balance within the Tao. These are not competing claims to be ranked. They are humanity's most enduring attempts to answer the unanswerable, each shaping how billions of people live, grieve, and hope. Philosophy asked the question differently, not where does the soul go, but what actually are we? Socrates reportedly welcomed death as a release of the soul from the body. Descartes argued mind and body were fundamentally separate substances. Kant claimed the true nature of reality, and the soul, may be permanently beyond human perception. Schopenhauer saw individual death as an illusion within a deeper, unified will. Carl Jung proposed that the unconscious mind touches something larger than the individual self. William James, one of the first scientists to seriously study religious and mystical experience, argued consciousness might extend beyond what ordinary awareness can access. None of them proved an afterlife. But together, they proved the question is not naive. It is one of the oldest, most serious inquiries in human thought. Modern science still has no final answer for what consciousness even is, which keeps the entire question open. Materialism holds that consciousness is entirely produced by the brain, and ends when the brain dies. Dualism holds that mind and matter are fundamentally distinct. Panpsychism proposes that some form of consciousness may be a basic feature of the universe itself. Integrated information theory attempts to mathematically define what makes a system conscious at all. Each theory is taken seriously by credentialed researchers. None is proven. That uncertainty is not a weakness of science, it is science being honest about the edge of what it currently knows. A few phenomena remain especially difficult to explain. Terminal lucidity, moments of sudden clarity in patients with advanced dementia, shortly before death. Shared death experiences, where family members report sensing the same imagery as the dying person. Young children, in a small number of documented cases studied by researchers, describing detailed memories that resemble another life. Skeptics point to coincidence, memory error, and cultural suggestion. Researchers who study these cases argue the pattern deserves closer investigation, not dismissal. Both positions are held by serious, credentialed people, and the honest answer, today, is that we simply do not know. Here is what we do know, with certainty: thinking about death changes how people live. Psychological research consistently shows that confronting mortality, rather than avoiding it, tends to increase gratitude, compassion, and a clearer sense of purpose. Traditions from Stoic philosophy to Buddhist meditation have used the awareness of death, deliberately, as a tool for living more fully. If consciousness is more than the brain, then death may not be an ending. But if consciousness ends with the body, then every second of this life becomes infinitely precious. Perhaps the greatest mystery is not what happens after death. Perhaps it is whether we are truly living before it. What do you believe happens after death? Share your thoughts below.